we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Kayla House with Hustle and Heels. I am the chair for 2020, and Hustle and Heels is a ladies lead Hustle and Heels Ladies Lead NWA is an initiative of the Rogers-Lowell Chamber of Commerce dedicated to empowering, educating, and connecting women with a modern approach to professional and business development. Just so you guys kind of know what we are and what we're doing here, we have a speaker who we're going to talk to about like how to maneuver through COVID-19 and how it's changed the world and mental health through COVID-19. Quickly, I wanted to say our sponsors. Verizon is our empowerment sponsor. We've got an education sponsor, Black Hills Energy, Arkansas Democrat Gazette, and these are logos that are coming through right now. And so for the people that are here live, we're at Thrive Real Estate Office, and Java Dudes politely offered us some coffee. So we have coffee here, which I'm sorry if you're at home you can't have because their coffee is the best. They have a lavender latte. If you've not tried a lavender latte, I'm telling you it's the best. So COVID-19's changed the world, and it's brought a lot of challenges, physical and mental. And so we wanted to bring, Katie here. She is a certified cognitive and behavioral therapist, and we thought this would be a good topic to kind of touch on. I know that I've heard from several women, including myself, that this has been a struggle. I'm sorry, I feel very Ricky Bobby-ish. I do talk with my hands, so you'll have to just adjust. A little bit about Miss Katie. So I met Katie, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, it has to have been.
We've served on a board together for Women in Networking, which she currently serves on that board. She's got numerous leadership roles in networking organizations across the state. And in the last several years, Katie's devoted time to educating the community on mental health awareness through presentations, guest speaking engagement, news and interview publications. So she has been, she's one of my favorite people. I love to listen to her speak. I feel like there's so much knowledge up there, you can't write fast enough when she's talking. So do you want to say anything real quick before we get started?
Well, thanks for that. I like that. No, I think I'm ready to go. If you're ready to go, I'm ready to go.
So we kind of Katie and I kind of brainstormed and put together some questions that she's seen a lot in her practice in the last couple months with COVID and shutdowns and, isolation. And so we're going to kind of have a Q&A. I'm going to ask some questions that we felt like would be beneficial to everybody. And then if you guys have questions, send them in to the Hustle and Heels. At the end of the program, we'll go through those questions and we can get some questions answered for you. So there's so much change and adjustment I am facing right now. How do I put that into perspective in order to reduce some of the emotional distress that comes with it?
Right. So one of the things that we're seeing is you might be experiencing some additional stress that wasn't there pre-COVID, right? So one of the things that I've noticed in my practice is that obviously we're operating and behaving completely different than we were 4 months ago. But what's different is our thoughts and ideas and expectations have not caught up to our behaviors, right? So we have new behavior, new operating, new routine every day. Expectations are still the same of what the norm should be. So we really have to get our thought process up to speed. And there's a couple of ways to do this. And this is where we really want to write things down today to really gain what we want from this. So one of the things that cognitively we can do is start to shift our focus to accepting that everything is a moving target in mental health. Everything is a moving target in what we're doing. So today we can plan and have expectations. Tomorrow that might not be the reality. And the sooner we come to a bit of an acceptance of that, the easier time we will have in adjustment. So that's really the first theme. One of the other things that's going to be really important right now, and what I'm trying to teach people that come and see me is the difference between preference versus need. So one of the ways to kind of manage your own expectations with what's happening is to identify, is this my preference or my need? And people say, well, Katie, how do I do that? Well, a need versus a preference, you want to ask yourself, is there a consequence if this particular situation or thing doesn't turn out like I want it to? What's the consequence? Is the consequence just like I'm going to be uncomfortable, or I'm going to be, a little bummed? Or is the consequence going to be like, something more severe? if you identify what's the preference versus the need and the way that you're kind of addressing the world, that's going to help you kind of rein in some of those issues in feeling just emotionally kind of out there. So I hope that makes sense in terms of some of the things that you can do to try to adjust to and I don't even want to say the new norm, but just what's different right now. And again, because there's not really a new norm to land to, because that's uncertain, which is, you know, what's uncomfortable right now is we just don't have any certainty.
So this one hits me kind of personal, but I find like I'm a very people person. I mean, I'm sure anybody who knows anything about me knows that I love people and I love to be around people, but I find myself feeling low sometimes, but I know people that have it much worse off than me, and I don't want to complain. What is the best option?
Right. So we're all affected differently by this, you know, COVID-19 situation. And I've got, you know, some teenagers that missed out on prom that are grieving that, all the way up to, you know, a woman whose father died in the hospital with no one around. She wasn't allowed in. So serious, you know, losses that we're experiencing. And what I want to communicate right now is a loss is a loss at any level. And so what we need to maybe shift towards is that our situations are unique to us, and not to maybe minimize those things in efforts to say, well, someone else has it worse. Yes, that's good to keep into perspective, but you want to identify your loss as it comes. Otherwise, I think it's going to pile up, and I think it's going to be too much at the end of this, because, you know, let's say that maybe, you know, we're experiencing the brunt of this maybe for the next 6 months. Who knows? That's an arbitrary, you know, timeline. The mental health impact is going to last far beyond 6 months. So we're in this for the long haul in terms of how we feel emotionally. So definitely, you know, if it's a loss, recognize it as a loss, grieve it. You know, it's okay to say, this was disappointing to me. My birthday was kind of a COVID birthday, right? It was back when everything was shut down. And that hit me a little harder than I expected. And I felt like such a baby. But, you know, I put that into its place and grieved it for what it was. And like, okay, maybe next year will be better, you know? So, and again, much worse is happening, but it's important to recognize.
So how can I tell if my low days are actually signs of something more serious?
Sure. So we're probably all up and down and around right now. And so one thing I want to maybe educate on is that in mental health, we kind of give a 6-month, let's say, grace or adjustment period for life-changing events, right? So let's say, you know, 4 months ago, our lives changed when we kind of went on lockdown, right? Obviously, we've had maybe multiple life-changing events. And so what I want to say is give yourself the 6 months to kind of be a little up and down and around within normal limits. Now, how do you tell when it's outside of normal limits? Or how do you identify that with your loved one? And I would say that there are ways to see that something is impacting or having an adverse impact when perhaps the functioning level of that person is starting to be impaired. So functioning level, what does that mean? Is their sleep deprived? Is your sleep deprived or impacted in any way? Appetite. Is your normal daily function, are you not able to function as you normally would? Those are signs that maybe something else is wrong. On the emotional side of things, if you are just unable to manage your emotions, and it's not just like okay, I'm going to have a moment and I'm able to move forward with that, but it's much more long lasting and it's affecting other things, that's when we would say it might be, you know, time to see someone. And if you watch, or if you follow my Facebook page, KULCBT, I recently did a couple of little videos about helplessness, hopelessness, and worthlessness. And those are really 3 indicators right now that we want to be looking for. If you're feeling any of those to any degree, helpless, hopeless, worthless, that is another indicator that maybe it's time to go talk to somebody.
So as women in business, I find some of the things we are dealing with right now especially challenging. Can we talk about those challenges?
Sure. So women in business are affected a little bit differently. So just being a little bit more of the empath, you know, we're going to be affected by laying off employees, maybe to a higher degree. There might be a situation where, you know, your life-work balance really has always been a challenge, but really became challenging a few months ago, when now maybe you're homeschooling from home and trying to work, you know. So I think it's okay to say that those things are a little bit more challenging for women, especially maybe if you're an entrepreneur and you have to work, you have to figure out, you know, something. I don't have a luxury. Kayla doesn't have the luxury just to not, you know, be moving forward and figuring out some type of a plan. You know, there's, you know, we're limited in working from home in some ways for that. We have to, you know, be creative and find ways around that. And so I think that it's okay to say, like, yes, this is a struggle for women in business. And we can talk about that. We can have those conversations.
It's been a struggle for me. And I know that the different stresses are so much different now versus, you know, I've got people that are moving here that haven't seen houses that they're buying, and that is a whole nother stress on I'm an agent for buying a house, and, you know, they're coming here, they've never seen it, and it's in new construction, and I'm having panic attacks over whether they're even going to like it, because it looks so much different on FaceTime than it does in real life.
Oh, sure.
But that's just my personal stuff.
Sure. Wait, and there's 40 stories of that on this call and in this room, you know.
So do other people feel the same way I do, and how do I have productive conversations about what I'm experiencing?
Sure, I'd say absolutely people feel the way you do. And you know, that's something that we're all dealing with this right now in different capacities, right? How to maybe have productive conversations about this. So you might see, you know, online unproductive conversations about what's happening, but maybe let me give you a few tips of having, you know, really quality conversations around this to get some information and to maybe help yourself feel better. So one way to do that is to ask questions. Ask questions to your peers, to your friends, to your colleagues about how they're doing. Check in on them. That will demonstrate trust and positivity, and before you know it, we'll be vulnerable and having, you know, be able to bond in the experience, right? You want to bond in the experience, and reach out. Maybe avoid circular conversations that are either going to escalate or go nowhere. If you feel like this isn't really going to be productive at all, it's probably okay to let that go right now. Again, preference versus need. Is this a need that I have to really, you know, line this situation out, or is it just a preference to get my opinion out there? And really evaluating, you know, what the benefit to that is going to be. And I think that, you know, with that, we will demonstrate some positivity, and it will be a much healthier conversation in the long run about what we can actually do.
So do you have any tips or tricks or, you know, things that you felt like? Me personally, I'm an exercise. If I exercise, that tends to help me, even if it's just go for a run outside, since the gyms are a little weird right now. Going for a run outside helps me. Is there any tips or tricks that you have that you tell your patients maybe? Sure.
A lot of my patients are finding new things that maybe they've never done. So myself, I've recently you know, try to be a little bit, practice cooking skills and maybe, you know, do some things about that. I'm not the best cook, but that's what was available for me to do. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, let's learn a new skill maybe, because there was nothing else really to do. And so I think that that's something, you know, find what you can do. Experience it, say, does this work for me or does it not? And if it doesn't, that's okay, move on to the next thing. But sitting idle is going to be difficult right now because you're going to be with your thoughts. You might not know what to do with those thoughts. It's going to be evidence that this is hard and that this is not what you want. And again, that's more of the evidence that our thoughts have not caught up to our behaviors or what we're experiencing right now.
All right, so we'll go ahead and see if I can see this. I swear I'm really smart, guys. It's just sometimes these computers. So does anybody in the audience, or I guess we can't really use the term audience, there's not a lot of people, have any questions for Katie? Anyone? Shay.
How have you, so there's obviously a lot of parents that are working from home, and they probably have kids of all different ages, being a teenager. How do you find a lot of people working from home are also dealing with these things of what we never experienced as growing up, like, you know, you can't go here, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't run rampant like you want to. How would you deal with that?
Well, that's definitely I think one of the main things that we're struggling with right now, especially if you're having to, you know, also work on top of that. It's kind of like, you know, your role just completely changed, and that's a difficult adjustment, obviously. You know, and I have people that are coming to me and saying, is it okay that we're not doing like dance class on Zoom and things like that? And like, yes, like do whatever you need right now, you know, make it right for yourself. I think that this is so difficult. It's not like what this family is doing is right for us. It's what works for your household and what works for your child. So I mean, and again, it's going to be, and I can't stress this enough, it's going to be a trial and error basis. And that's the way it should be, because we don't know. We've never done this. You know, a lot of parents are grieving right now what they think their children are losing, right? And yes, there's a level of that of course we, you know, have only had one experience and only know it this way. But we also have the opportunity to create a different experience for our children. We have to find what that looks like and maybe how to really, you know, make the best of that for them.
So it looks like we've gotten a question up here. How do we navigate all the stresses of COVID-19 as well as other life stresses, deaths, divorces, etc.?
I'm so glad we have that question because life did not slow down, right? Life did not stop. People didn't stop getting sick from other things. You know, yes, we're experiencing, people are still going through divorces. We're still in custody battles. We're still in all of these things, right? And again, it's giving yourself the flexibility to move within those things. And I think that, you know, just understanding, again, you know, and I'll go back to it, preference versus need. Like, is this important right now to me, right? Is this something that I need to be, for an example, I like to dress a certain way in the office, and I like, you know, and I call it, you know, maybe my brand, right? And a friend came to visit me and she said, you look ridiculous. And I'm like, why's that? I think I look nice. And she's like, no one is dressed like that right now, Katie. Do you know what's happening in the world? There's something wrong with you. And I'm like, you think it's offensive? And she goes, the guy next to you in this office over here that's an executive is wearing a 5K shirt and socks and sandals. And you're over here looking like you're going to some Michael Kors runway. And I was like, I got it. So I needed to scale that back to not only demonstrate that that's okay to people, but also for myself, because that takes a long time to get together every day and it's a little uncomfortable. So like now I'm wearing workout pants to the office and I feel great, you know? So be allowed to do those things, you know, with all of the other stressors that, you know, again, preference versus need. It is a preference of mine to dress that way, right? It is a preference of mine. Under normal circumstances, that's how I would look. The need is not there right now. I have other needs that I have to attend to. And so, you know, with everything that's happening right now, filter that. Filter what is a preference and a need, and you'll be able to manage those other situations that life just naturally brings up. And again, if you're experiencing anything that we would consider outside of normal limits, so it's lasting longer than 6 months, it's affecting your functioning, go talk to somebody.
I gave up on real pants a long time ago. for those that know me know that I live in yoga pants because I'm not above crawling up in an attic or underneath the house. So I feel like I need to be comfortable for that. So I think that's the only other question we have right now. Does anybody else have any questions? Anything? I guess that's, so a couple things, Katie, I did want you to go ahead and give out your Facebook page again. You kind of said it a little fast.
Okay.
And I wanted people to be able to follow that. And so, you know, if there's, maybe they can reach out to you through that.
Absolutely.
I know Facebook's not always the best way to communicate with people, but sometimes it's good to get that start. So if you could tell us your Facebook again.
It's Katie Wells CBT, and I'd love you to like the page. If you've listened to this today, you got something out of it, I'd love you to give a recommendation. One of the things, you know, that I'm doing, and listening into all of your introductions, the mental health community came out for this, and I'm so glad you guys did. Thank you so much, because this is our time to rise to the occasion. And I've been saying, you know, if you know a mental health provider right now, check in on them, go hug them, you know, do something for them, because we're in the trenches and we're hearing things that we've never heard before, and we're dealing with things that we didn't think that, you know, we would be dealing with. So because of that, and because there is such a high need, July is usually our low time, and I don't know anybody that's not full right now. Because of that, I'm doing some videos that are educational in nature to maybe get some information out there, and I'm just trying to be aware and you know, give the community what I have, you know, that I can. And so there's some videos on there that might be helpful. My most recent post was about me getting contacts and that being a stressful situation, and what I did about that. So go view that stuff. It'll be helpful.
So there's one question that came in while we were having that conversation. What if dressing up is what makes you happy? How do you balance the difference in people who work in the same office space, since everyone is reacting to COVID in different ways?
Okay, so it makes you happy. Yeah, so I mean, it does make me happy, but honestly, wearing some gym clothes also made me happy too, and I didn't know it. So because I never thought that it was loud, right? That was my thoughts not matching my behavior. So I think that there are times like today, I think I look a little bit nice. So I feel good about that. The need was met there. My preference was met there. I think there's appropriate times to use these things, right? So there's appropriate times to say it's time to dress up, appropriate times to say, you know, maybe something a little bit more casual is the case, or you apply that to a different situation altogether. There are times where maybe, you know, it's appropriate to, you know, log the kids on and have Zoom, you know, friend group meetings, and there are other times where you've had it and that's not going to be the best thing for our household right now. So it's kind of an evaluating of what's the most appropriate for me right now, and is it feasible? Is it reasonable? And that's my favorite thing to say in therapy: is this reasonable?
I have a quick, do you think people are drinking more? Or is that just me?
No, that's a thing. That's a thing. And that's that goes back to, you know, you want to find healthy coping skills to deal with things. And I would say, you know, in evaluating like the impact that this has on you, looking at maybe some of those, what we call maladaptive coping skills, have those gotten worse? So overeating, drinking, potentially, you know, things that we would consider okay in moderation, but destructive if it gets out of hand. I think that's another thing to look at.
I totally agree. Oh, I think we have one more question.
I have a question. I had a recent situation where I said something that I thought was very benign to somebody, and they took it because of heightened stress and different views on different things. It became a very stressful situation, and I felt put in a corner. How do you go about de-escalating a situation like that in these stressful times?
Absolutely. So one thing that I think is helpful to remember is that irritability and the potential for things to land wrong is going to be higher right now. In that particular situation, you can either, and honestly, it might just be extra awareness of the things that you're saying. But also, I think being able to go back and mend it is going to be helpful right now. And it's going to, again, demonstrate community and that we're all in this together, even though we have different unique experiences. But going back and one downing, right? That's what we say in therapy. When you one down, you basically assume some of the responsibility for what was said. And so just say, you know, I totally didn't intend it that way, but understand why it made you feel that way. I really hope we can move past that and we're okay, right? And being able to do that, I think will go a long way, rather than maybe just avoiding it like maybe we would have and it just fizzling out. So going back and mending these situations, also understanding that things are just going to be taken out of context. And if it doesn't get mended, you know, because people have the choice, you know, it's your responsibility to act, you know, to be mindful of what you say and go to that person and potentially mend it. What happens from there is completely out of your control. So if it doesn't get mended, that's also okay. You at least made the effort.
How do I balance two huge changes happening at once? Very specific example, but I found out I was pregnant the same week NWA shut down. And there are recommended assessments for gauging depression and understanding how to self-assess.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll give you a way to kind of evaluate your mood to see maybe if it's within that normal limits or a little bit beyond. So, and this is also on my Facebook page. I'll post a little bit more about this. When we want to scale things, right? Because in mental health, I just don't want to say, oh yeah, it's better. Okay, it's better based on what? I like to put numbers to things so I can see that this is actually getting better or no, it's not. So what I want you to do when you are evaluating your mood is I want you to assign it a number based on 0 to 10. So 0 is no emotional disturbance at all. That means you're good. And 10 is severe disturbance. So either you've got some panic or you are so depressed that maybe you can't function. I want you to do that for a couple of weeks. I want you to say, okay, today this is where I'm at. I'm at a 4. Okay, 4 is good. Well, today I jumped to a 7. And if that number is high, on the high end, and I would say high is 7 to 10, more times than not during that week or two, then I think it's probably time for you to see someone and talk about some things and see someone. That means just get some sort of professional assistance, right? And that could be from a doctor, an OBGYN in your case. That could be from a therapist, from anyone that you trust as a medical professional. Because at this point, we are experiencing compounding issues. So again, and we've always dealt with a stigma in mental health. But now we're under different circumstances where we really, that stigma to us as mental health providers is kind of silly because it's just our norm. But it's even more silly now because we just don't want people to struggle when they don't have to. So use that little trick, right? 0 to 10. 0 is no disturbance at all. No emotional disturbance. 10 is maybe the worst you've ever had. Evaluate it for a week or two and see what you come up with and see maybe if there's patterns. What days am I worse? What's going on those days? Now, am I worse on the weekends? I've got people that the weekends just aren't good for them, and vice versa, people that struggle during the week. Maybe we can knock down and form a plan from that information of what's helpful for you.
It's great advice. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to deal with the other child question, which is in our older generation.
Yeah.
How do you navigate when you have some older people who are obviously during this pandemic or whatever you want to call it, are more susceptible to catching it, but are saying, hey, I'm going to live my life and I'm not going to let this stop me. How do you help open their eyes to be like, listen, this is going to affect you if you don't abide by these rules? how would you gauge that?
Oh, that's so hard, right? And again, I think that is kind of what we experience with that population, maybe even on the regular, just not out, just it's COVID right now, right? Because I mean, how many of us have a parent or grandparent or someone that eventually shouldn't be driving, right? But then how do we intervene? What do we do? That type of thing. And so, I think that obviously if you have some sort of legal way to help that, that's helpful. Like if you're the power of attorney or something like that, that is such a difficult situation. And I think that it can be monitored to an extent. And education and things like that can occur. And sometimes it really resonates for them to go to the doctor and hear those things from someone outside of you. So I think that might be maybe the best piece of something that you could do that would help. But then again, it might be limited. And so part of that is, accepting where your control is. And that is so difficult when you're thinking of, someone that you love possibly being at risk. But that's what we're dealing with here is accepting the unprecedented and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, obviously, if their life is at risk, gauge that too, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think again, and that's going to be different for every person. But yes, that's a huge concern right now because that's who's affected.
That's personally been tough on me. I haven't seen, I'm super close with my grandmother. She's 85, be 86 in August, and her boyfriend is 88, and he's had some heart problems, so I haven't been able to see them in months. And it's difficult because she can text and get pictures, but FaceTiming is just really not an option because, 85. Pregnancy wasn't answered. Okay. How do you balance two huge changes happening at once?
Okay. Two huge changes happening at once. Well, again, one huge change is going to cause, your maybe homeostasis to be off a little bit as you adjust. Two is going to be, even more heightened. So, and a lot of people are dealing with that right now. I'm amazed at the people that have switched jobs during COVID-19, but also within that had to move or had some other, found out, they're pregnant or have a child or this or that, right? So I think that again, that's an example of life still marching forward under the construct of something that we're not used to. And so I think that, again, to manage it the way that you always have, understanding that things will be, different and you might have to filter. And again, there are days where one change we might not be able to really tackle. And it might be, okay, which one is the priority or which one do I need to address today? Really, the other one can wait because its deadline is maybe next week or something like that, or there's no consequence if I don't do anything with that today. Okay, so I can mentally let that one go and focus on this one today. So it's very much a prioritization of what's helpful for you and what you have to let go in order to survive. And again, bring in your support network, right? Bring in your support network. So your colleagues, your family, the people around you, ask for help. That's something that's, we don't like doing. It's a little counterintuitive. But right now we're at that point. I moved offices during this time, and it was extremely stressful. And opening a business during COVID-19 is rough, just to let everyone know. And one of the things, like, I could verbalize, like, I am so stressed. I don't know what to do. And I remember I was talking to my mom, and she was like, we're here. We'll do whatever you need. And my grandpa moved my whole office. And before you, turn me in for elder abuse, the dude is really fit. So there's that. But she said to me, like, Katie, I've never been a therapist. I don't know what you need. I don't know what's normal during this process. So I really had to stop and think and write things down of what I had to do and what was me, like could only be me, like no one can sit in therapy for me, like I have to do that, right? And what other people could do. and really just say, okay, I got to let this go. And you have to do this out of necessity. And I have to be okay with that, because normally I'd like my hand in everything, but we're not operating that way.
Do we have any other questions? Anyone? Doesn't look like we've gotten any more questions coming through. So I want to say thank you, huge thank you to Miss Katie. And I know that her name is spelled K-A-T-I.
Oh,
So if you're looking for her on Facebook, it's K-A-T-I. I know my name's spelled funky too, so I have to deal with that. I'm K-double-A-L-A, and if I say K-A-A-L-A, people think I'm stuttering. It's great. So sponsors, once again, Verizon, Black Hills, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Thrive is here hosting us. We're here in the office, and we've got a few people here, and I just wanted to say, like, thank you to Hustle and Heels for helping us put this together. We are working on a September event. As far as whether that will be virtual or in person, it's still up in the air. But check out your social media channels for that. We look forward to, wait, sorry. I got one more. Another topic is working from home with your spouse or kids. Don't forget to mention, oh, sorry. That was a side note for me. Working from home with your spouse or kids.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like divorce rates are up?
Yes, but I will also balance that by saying we are also seeing connection in that regard as well. Because some of the stressors are removed, you know, and that's something to remember right now that I didn't even mention. You know, yes, we have all of these new challenges that we're experiencing. We want to balance that with the things that actually have become more helpful during this time. You know, there are things that have made my life a little bit easier. And so I want to be able to say, hey, that's helpful right there. At least we don't have to deal with that, right? In addition to everything else. And so I think that's one way that couples have connected is, you know, definitely on a level of we're having to work ourselves out, and it might be harder, but we're doing that, and we're seeing some gains, and maybe like we're having to talk more and communicate more. So there's that piece of it, but then there's also, well, what if it's contentious, right? And that's definitely a concern right now. I mean, you've got two parents and possibly a couple of kids, and they're, you know, both parents are working, the kids have to be taken care of, you know, it's a thing. And to my telemental health therapists out there, you know what I'm talking about, because you'll log in with your patient and you ask, how are things with this person that they're now quarantined with, that they normally has been a presenting issue, and they're having to whisper to you, or they're going to the door to make sure that person's not listening or not there, right? Or they're out in their car and it's 100 degrees and they're trying to be on, you know, trying to have their appointment with you. So yes, it's definitely a thing to watch for, definitely something that we have to be aware of. And knowing to when is an appropriate time to have your time, and what does that look like? Because your time may have gotten commandeered in this entire thing. A lot of people, a lot of women especially, use going to work as a type of self-care, right? That is when I'm away from all the things, right? And I can actually focus on something as a self-esteem booster for me. That may have been compromised during this time. So we've got to create that. We've got to find a way that your time is, you know, still intact, to where it's not like, okay, I'm just around these kids 24/7 now, and I've lost who I am, and I don't know what to do about it. So I hope that makes sense.
I love my child, but not that much. Okay, so I'm also, that little note that I was reading, sorry guys, I wasn't supposed to read that out loud. So we recorded this. So we're gonna release this on the Rogers-Lowell Chamber YouTube. And I'm pretty sure probably somewhere on Facebook-ish. And so at least definitely a link will come out to the YouTube page. So if you have questions, Katie's a local expert. She's amazing. Obviously, we've, you know, basically picked her brain for an hour, and I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else has as well. But if you have questions, you want to send this to a friend of yours, then feel free to send this out. We will have the recording, and look forward to hearing that myself, just because I don't get to really take a lot of notes when I'm the one talking.
That's true.
But so big thank you, Katie.
Oh, absolutely.
I think this was probably one of the best ones we've done in a long time.
And don't hesitate to stop the questions, right? So, go to my Facebook page and ask a question. Email me, do something like that. If I don't know, and I'm not afraid to say that I don't know, I know who to ask, or I know who to put you in touch with. Like just on this call right now, like I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, and that's my specialty. On this call right now, I think we heard there's a foster care specialist. Jessica Castaldi, my good friend, is a grief and loss specialist. If you need a presentation from her, she's got one prepared, and it's incredible on grief and loss. So I will put you into contact with who you need to talk about, or who you need, right? So definitely not pretending to be the expert out here at all in anything other than CBT, right? Which is what I know, and I can't really separate that from the world. But definitely I'll do my due diligence in figuring it out and helping you find the person to get to.
So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So I guess we'll go ahead and log off. Thank you guys so much for coming that are here and for logging in through Zoom. I know new norm, we're all just trying to get used to it. So I actually don't like that term, but thanks guys.